town of the good, the bad, and the weird. You either live by the gun, or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And in this MicroView, we are going back to Gladiator days. We originally had planned for this to be in between Gladiator and Tomb Raider, but I think it's still kind of fitting.
It does. It still fits.
But we are taking a look at lesser sword and sandals flicks, looking specifically at one of my favorite movies that has some of the dumbest dialogue in it ever.
I've heard.
Hercules Against the Sons of the Sun.
This is, of course, in the genre of Hercules, the fill-in-blank here, a large chunk of movies made in between the 60s and the 80s, where Hercules is the main star. It's not always the same actor. It's not always even the same director, but they are always the same formulaic style movie,
Yes.
whereas Hercules goes on a grand adventure. In fact, we've covered one.
Yes, Hercules in New York. So we were a little bit relatively knowledgeable about this genre.
We are. This one, however, is, I think, closer to the classic dialogue and styling that we're used to, or I say I am very used to with these sorts of movies. Whereas our original review of Hercules in New York, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Strongest Man on Earth, that one is more of a fun adaptation, but not really a good review of the genre, whereas this is a much closer representation of the genre as a whole.
Yes, and it's very, very much in line with being as historically accurate as possible, and I will get to that because
yes, but while also
boy.
doing the smallest amount of research, and the thing you think is wrong is surprisingly not.
I doubt they did any research. They just mashed two things together.
Yes, for sure they 100% mashed two things together, and if you will remember, way back in your collective remembrance, the time I accidentally watched Beastmasters and opened up that floodgate and I watched them all consecutively. So the Hercules, this type of Hercules movies is in the same genre as Beastmaster. So this is meant for the most bro dude child.
Yeah.
To really just enjoy watching some silly fight scenes and maybe see a tit.
Yes. So for those unfamiliar, Hercules Against the Sons of the Sun. It's also known under multiple titles of Hercules and the Sons of the Sun, or Hercules versus the Sons of the Sun.
Part of that's because I think when it moved to Italy and to Spain, they changed the translation a little bit, and then we re-imported the DVDs back over after this was no longer popular, surprise, surprise. And so, the direct translation changed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was made in Italy, so...
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
we never keep anything.
But it's about Hercules freeing the Incan, or group of Incans against from a tyrannical ruler, let's say that.
Yes. The first problem that we have to jump over with this plot point is the most obvious. Hercules has no business being in South America.
I'll get into that in just 1 second.
Okay.
So this movie is directed by Osvaldo Chiaravani, written by Chiaravani and Franco Tanuzini?
Tanuzini.
Tanuzini.
Close enough, I guess.
And adapted from Maria del Carmen Martinez Roman. Long-ass names.
Of course.
Stars Mark Forrest, who went on to play a handful of Hercules.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Maria Pace in Guillermo Gemma.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a lot of them are just a lot of unknowns. They maybe did 1 or 2 movies and disappeared from the scene. But yes, I'm glad you brought up the Incans because
okay, so to be very clear, the reason we are using certain names for things is because this movie specifically calls out certain groups of people. They did enough research to get some stuff right. So, despite the time being wrong, they do call them the Incans for the whole movie.
Here's how wrong the timeline is.
Yeah.
So, for starters, Hercules has to be shipwrecked in full armor.
Yes.
And he either has to go all the way down under South America to get to the Incans, or has to somehow go around the world either under Africa or to the Far East.
They do not explain this.
And then gets to South America. And on top of that, so the Incans were, but they existed between, their civilization existed between 1438 and 1572.
Yes.
Hercules is ancient as fuck. I didn't realize how old his depictions come from. Some of the earliest ones are from the 1st century, and some are from like 300 BC.
Let's be generous here. How close do we get?
So yeah, like even if we go back and give them credit for Heracles.
Yes.
I mean, he 100% would not have come across the Incans. He most likely would have come across the Nazca or the Chavin people.
Yeah.
And it's just so outrageously bad. But I mean, it is. Weirdly, it works though because of how bad and what we expect in this movie to not be historically accurate. But granted, we're not putting it to the same standards as like Gladiator, Patriot, or Braveheart. This is
because this movie does not claim to be historically inspired whatsoever. Okay, so I do know a little bit on why.
Okay.
So there was a brief, kind of like how occasionally our Americans will occasionally like get this spurt of like really into Greco-Roman stuff, right?
Yeah.
We see it come up in
neoclassical architecture.
Yeah, we see it come up in architecture every, like, I don't know, probably every 100 years it shows back up.
The middle of the suburbs with Roman columns
for
that
no goddamn reason.
Be there.
So ugly.
At least they're Doric. They're not trying to be like the fancy Corinthians for the most part.
Thank God. But we also see it pop back up, like, about every, like, 50 to 80 years, we see it pop back up in literature, too. We see it pop back up in song, in styling, in, like, literature as well. And, like, we are currently in that era. Like, there is currently a wave of Greco-Roman inspired stuff. Like, think how Percy Jackson influenced us in our childhood. Like, that is an easy look at how this is influencing us. You can see it in song, you can see it in literature, you can see it in trends and stylings. It's not a direct translation, but it is an interest and fascination.
I'm going to confess, Chris, I never read Percy Jackson.
It's okay. You don't have to. Eventually, we're going to have to talk about the movie.
I have seen the first movie because I agreed to be the nice older brother and go see it with him while my parents went and saw Shutter Island. I was
going to say, we are at the like cusp of like whether or not you were into it. You were already a Greco-Roman kid and you know it for our age. Like, understandable. There is a similar wave with other genres of history and cultures. We sometimes see a burst of like Mexican inspiration and cultures. We sometimes see a German burst of inspiration and cultures, specifically like early German.
The continuous flow of weeb shit.
Yes. Honestly, the never-ending wheel of weeb shit. There was a time when ancient Mayan and Incan sources, but not like historically accurate, but like the idea of them was also something that influenced a lot. We see it a lot in adventure movies. That's a pretty easy and obvious one to like pinpoint and see in big overarching stuff. But like the idea, the topic, the like quote unquote vibes of ancient Mayan, Incan, and South America was something that like occasionally would come through. And this unfortunately is in the garbage portion of writing and movie genre, which is my favorite because the garbage portion of either books or movies generally tend to shine brightest for whatever is currently interesting to the general masses. And so this came out when there was a mild interest in South American culture, specifically around the Incan and Mayas.
It makes me think of how vampires were really big when I was in high school.
Yes,
because I just
it's the same level of garbage.
I found a series of clips of Robert Pattinson just like what his first response is.
Bless him.
I read the book and it read like something that shouldn't have been published.
Yes, and now look at the absolute wave that series has created. But yes, like we go through similar things with monsters. We go through similar things with just horror in general. Cultural and like the ideas and vibes of a world. Like for a while we were in a K-pop and like Korean styled stuff.
Koreaboo is the term I have learned.
Yes. Like where we take a lot of inspiration from whatever we think is currently popular in fashion, makeup, skincare routines has been popular. Like same thing happened here. It just happened in the most direct format physically humanly possible.
Yeah, it's
so like when
special.
Yeah, so as we go through this very quickly, there are going to be a few things that get brought up because of this movie that I didn't know were, like, supposed to be common knowledge. And they were common knowledge because everyone had an interest for a very brief time, kind of like how everyone quickly learned all of the, like, Norse gods for a hot minute because of Thor. Same thing where there's going to be some, like, major points where I had to stop and Google that I don't think the audience of this during this time would have had to stop and Google.
Well, they wouldn't have had Google because this movie is from
the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, like, this is the same, like, they're fun facts, whether or not they are true, we'll get to. But they're, like, some fun facts that, like, generally people would have been like, oh, yeah, well, I heard that run around. I heard that, like, saying go through.
Yeah, I can see. It's like when I was a kid, I was told the difference between ninjas and samurai, where the samurai were Japanese and the ninjas were Chinese, and that's why they fought against each other.
Yeah, that's definitely wrong.
I mean, granted, we grew up in, like, the early days of internet, so, like, some stuff didn't ever...
Yes, but at the same time, there are garbage movies that reflect that, like, that brief interest that we all had in ninja-styled stuff for a while. Like, this is the same, only with, unfortunately, the Incans.
And the Romans.
And, well, honestly, not even. Just Hercules.
Just Hercules, yes.
Just Hercules. Which is an interesting thing, because there's a handful of characters, and Hercules and Tarzan, I think, are the two pillars of this style, where they are essentially self-insert, like, fan fictions, where Hercules is, like, the most useless, un-Herculean person physically made up.
Oh my god, can we... I do want to talk about how bullshit his strength is. Like, he has no strength in this movie.
This is the most un-Hercules Hercules I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of Hercules.
And I'm gonna go into some of the dialogue here a little bit, because, oh boy, is that stiff too, because...
It's very stiff.
So, like, there's a scene where someone gets crushed by a cart, and he can barely, like, lift the boulder off the dude. It feels like Javert. No.
Yes. What?
Jean Valjean.
Oh, Jean Valjean.
Yeah. Not Javert. Jean Valjean.
Like, lifting the log by himself. But in that, it was like, wow, this old man is so strong he can lift a pole. In this, it's like, wow, Hercules can barely lift a boulder.
Yes. And let me
Please note, an obviously foam boulder.
Yes. And it's not like Star Trek where they throw it and it bounces and you can be like, okay, maybe gravity-ish. No.
The other thing that I love is that they very briefly do explain to the audience why Hercules is in South America. We enter on a scene of him being shipwrecked, and by shipwrecked I mean washed ashore on a random beach somewhere, and there's two supposedly dead men who are definitely blinking and breathing in the background. And he, like, shakes them quickly and is like, no, my friends! And then walks into the jungle.
No, not even that. He wakes up and the group of Incans that he's becomes friends with is being attacked by another group.
That's right.
He saves them.
And, like, I immediately started texting one of my friends who's also into, like, understanding film and how it influences us throughout our time, and I was, like, furiously texting her as fast as I could, because the opening scene where Hercules actually finally gets to meet the native people of the land he's now washed ashore of is the only other buff man in this movie comes up, and they pretty much slap each other on the shoulder and go, you're a handsome man, you're a handsome man, we should be friends.
No, that is exactly what it is. And even then they're, like, all for the same cause, where it's like, it's this weirdly patriotic kind of Captain America bullshit.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh no, you have been, you are under tyranny. I will liberate you guys.
I call it the G.I. Joe, like, dialogue, where it sounds like someone playing with dolls. And, like, trying to come up with dialogue as they go. And when I say the only two buff men, I very much mean it, despite literally no one wearing a shirt in this movie except for the two women.
I will say there is a little bit one more buffer dude.
Yeah.
Barely.
And, like, granted, understandable. Hercules is clearly meant to be the buffest man alive. That's the whole nature of Hercules. That's why he's in the movie, I think. But it is hilarious that they did manage to find just really normal middle-aged men to be literally everyone else.
They had a budget.
I will give this movie credit, though. Something that has plagued the Hercules, and especially the Hercules, but also a bit the Tarzan, and honestly the, like, male fantasy genre in general is finding background casts for clearly specifically ethnic groups, and then just failing to cast those people at all.
Well, I mean,
this one does a decent job of trying to hide the very blatantly obviously wrong people and trying to like pull the background cast who was at least maybe Mexican to the front.
I mean,
but honestly,
probably Spanish, because I mean we're in it's filmed in Italy, so there's not really a lot of.
That's very true. There's only like a handful who, thankfully because this movie is grainy, that you can just point at and be like, that person has no business being an ancient Inca. But because this movie again does so little to set itself properly in history, it's one of those instances where, like, if this was a big budget, if this was trying to take itself seriously, I would be very upset that, like, we couldn't have put a little effort in, like, but no. Because this movie comes out right and is like, we don't know what we're doing, we're all here to play pretend, it feels like we get a little bit more of a pass.
Yeah, and the other thing with this movie, too, though, is we get that first little bit of action. And then we spend like almost half of the first 10-15 minutes of the movie is just walking.
Yes.
And then on top of that, they spend so much time having to explain the situation, get Hercules and us caught up on the entire history and the family drama that's going on between everyone. And I'm not gonna lie,
I'm not gonna lie, I had such a hard time following who was drama with what, because there's also background drama with some of the other characters where they like quickly slip it in where he like one person's like, oh yes, my sister's married to the horrible bad guy, and you're like, wait, what?
Oh no,
like, wait, hold on.
Not even married, she's gonna be the sacrifice to the bad guy.
There's a sacrifice,
She is the sacrifice, but they save her.
Yes, there's the sacrifice chick, and then there is another woman in this film. Oh. They look very similar, so I understand your confusion. But I have taken up a new game now that we've been watching more and more films. My new game is to count how many women actually speak in a movie. And in this film, there are 2, and that's also how many women are in the movie.
Great.
There is the damsel in distress, who, you're right, is being sacrificed in the most useless manner possible. She is put on an altar, very, like, think ancient Mayan sacrifice style. It's a movie in the 60s. You know what you're thinking of. And then instead of having a man with a dagger try to stab her, which is the normal run of things, or even have, like, some wild beast come out and, like, devour her. No, they have men at the bottom of the pyramid shoot arrows up at the top of the pyramid and hope they hit her. They can't see her. They just have to listen and hope she screams.
I mean...
Which is the whole reason why Hercules has enough time to waltz in and save her. But before he does all that, they have time for a choreographed dance.
Yes. That is the weird thing about this movie, is there's just so much that doesn't...
There's 2 dance sequences in this movie!
It has no business doing a lot of the bullshit it does. Like, honestly, it probably, if you cut down all the excessive explaining and dialogue, this movie is probably about maybe 30, 40 minutes. It's about the length of a TV show, I'd say. Which
makes sense. But at the same time, if you cut out all of the nonsense stuff, you would be left without the absolutely bizarrest things.
Yes. Like, I got obsessed with how bad this dialogue is, and I will share one of them.
Please, because if you don't, I will.
I'll share it on our TikTok as well, just so that way everyone can see it. It's the wheel conversation. That one is...
Okay, so I did have to Google the wheel conversation.
Okay, please tell me the wheel conversation.
Okay, so the wheel conversation makes sense for a 60s person because it is a fun fact that I'm sure everyone told all of their friends that the ancient Mayans... Not necessarily Incans, the ancient Mayans did not have the wheel. Granted, Incans, Mayans, same topography for the most part. The reason they had invented the wheel. It's not like they did not know what a wheel was. Get that very straight. They knew what a wheel was. However, where they lived, it made no goddamn sense for them to have wagons. Hercules is Roman. And what are the Romans known for?
Roads.
Roads. There are no roads in the jungle because that makes no sense.
All roads lead to Rome except for the Incan roads.
Apparently. But also, like, think about how steep the cliffs are. Like, if you're in the mountainous regions, like, it doesn't make sense.
You lost Machu Picchu twice.
Yeah. Jungle and vegetation in South America grows very quickly. Maintaining a road would be nearly impossible, let alone getting enough stone to, like, pave it like what Hercules is telling them to do in, like, one of the scenes where he's like, I'll teach you how to make a wheel.
Okay, so I'll do a brief summary of the wheel conversation. The wheel conversation goes like, I've noticed since I've come here, you do not have wheels. Wheels? What is a wheel? Wheels? You don't have wheels? No, what is a wheel? Wheels are things you use to move stuff. You could build your entire city and drive it up to their gates. And that's pretty much
the dialogue, like word for word.
And here's the thing about the wheels. They only ever get used towards the end of the movie. And it's not even in like the way you think, like they build like some giant like Trojan Puma or some shit.
That would be so cool, but no. That's not what they do.
It's just like 2 siege towers and like movable barricades.
European siege towers. And the most medieval looking shields known to man.
Oh, it's just so all over the place. And I do want to say one other conversation that I liked in the movie that I thought was pretty bad.
Yes, please.
It's the part where he's lifting the wheel. Mm-hmm. Or he's lifting the boulder from people. He doesn't lift a wheel.
There are no wheels.
There's one dude who's obsessed with being a mountaineer. And that's the only other buff dude in the movie.
That is the only other buff man. And he's like...
I can't believe you're not a mountaineer. Well, I'm not. Well, you are to us. Ha 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 ha.
As they slap each other's backs. Yeah, that's accurate. I forgot about the mountaineer man. He's obsessed with the idea that only mountaineers can be strong.
Yeah.
And, like, he challenges Hercules to a duel, which this is the other thing that blows my mind, is Hercules famous for going through all of those trials, being the strongest man alive.
This is pre-trial Hercules.
I hope. But even then, like, this is literally the son of a god gets his ass handed to him by a Boy Scout. Pretty much by Kronk from Emperor's New Groove is who he gets his butt handed to him.
And the style of duel, think of Star Trek level of duels.
Yes. Like, when I say there was some research done, I mean they bothered to look up city names because the city names they give are actual cities.
Okay.
That whether or not the timeline fits is up to you, because I don't know when Hercules landed here. Some of these probably didn't exist at the same time as the other, but, like, they did get names kind of sort of right.
I mean, it's a small, like, barely over 100-year time frame, so...
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. This is Hercules again, so, like, yeah. I don't know. We're messing with timey-wimey here. The other thing that they kind of got right is some of the characters' names kind of sort of work. Like, they're close enough, right? We're like, is the pronunciation spot on? I don't know. Probably not. But, like, it reads, like, it gets you close. Mm-hmm. So we got some names. We got names of cities. Those are about right. They did get the wheel fact kind of right, but also wrong at the same time. Like, they did have them. They just didn't use them for wagons because they had other means to move stuff. It's not like they were living in huts. They were one of the greatest civilizations of our time.
Well, that's also the funny thing, too, with this movie, and really bad side of it, too, is Hercules treats them all like they are the dumbest people in existence.
Which is hilarious, because Hercules is, like, in this movie anyway, the stupidest man alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's going through this stuff of, like, don't you guys have strategy? We are a people of war. I will teach you strategy. You will win.
Yeah.
Good fight.
Yeah. Again, though, his strategy is very much in stylings that we have seen recently in Gladiator, where we teach a bunch of men how to become an army in under 5 minutes.
Yes.
One of those is based a little bit more understandably than the other.
Yeah.
Gladiator, at least, they, like, actually maybe were in the army at one point, some of them. This one, they already had good fighting techniques that would have worked in their area, in their time period. Again, these are not just, like, cavemen living in caves, but this movie doesn't care.
No, it gives zero fucks at all.
No, and that's part of the fun of watching this movie, is just how wrong it gets everything.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, there's just so much dumb shit that happens. Like, them going through the secret passage, yes. Like, okay, you found a secret passage that now they're aware it exists.
Yeah, they, like, immediately have to tear it down.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what they do. Hercules, like, breaks a support and the caves in.
Yes.
And that's how they get away.
The other thing I love about this is, of course, the costumes, because that's one of my favorite things to look at, right?
They are pretty dope.
They are pretty dope. There is some budget. There's more budget in this film than in other films we've watched.
All the budget went to paying, like, the 2 leads and
yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah, no, there's a lot of detail in the costumes. None of them are historically accurate, including
Obviously. Hercules.
Like, Hercules' skirt is literally so short that at one point it rolls up just a little bit, and it is gone. It is under his belt. The man is wearing a skirt so short it makes the Hooters girls look embarrassed. Like, I can full on see his butt cheeks at times.
Yes. I know, Brian brought this up to lads night about how you could see his junk pretty easily,
yes,
too.
Like, and it's not just Hercules. Everyone who, like, the director deemed buff enough was given short skirt.
Yeah, also, I did want to do this one specifically because it's a good example of what Ridley Scott was fighting against when making Gladiator.
Yes, this is very much what everyone thought of when they thought, like, a Gladiator-style movie.
Yes.
Granted, this one is stupid in some ways that others weren't, but others were stupid in other ways that this one wasn't. So, like, you know, this is a pretty good representation of, like, the overall genre. And yes, the tiny skirt was very much a thing. And honestly, men's inseams in the 60s were short anyway, especially early 60s. Track shorts might have not existed for all the fact that, like, you can tell. Like, we have lots of documentation of how men's inseam has gotten longer over the years. Like, a lot. Like, a lot. If you need a fun game, you can look up young Ronald Reagan in shorts. His shorts are very short. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's like cross-country shorts.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you grew up in a school that didn't have a budget, you still have those shorts, I bet you. Especially if you're on the women's team and you got handed down the boys' shorts. Those shorts are so goddamn short. That's how you go faster, I think.
Yeah. Less wind resistance.
I guess. But
Gotta
also
show
they're
off
so
them legs.
But they're also so diaper shaped.
Men got trunks too.
Okay, when the front and the back are shaped the same, despite gender, despite how much you think you have, no one's butt and their front should be shaped that much the same that everybody's shorts for all of the cross-country and track team need to be reversible.
Well, for men, there is usually parts that hang in the front that
I'm aware.
I don't think people really want to see.
I'm aware. It has built-in undies. I know, because I was at a school with no budget. I had y'all's boys' shorts.
Mine didn't have built-in undies.
Ours were legit from the 60s. We hadn't upgraded since when I was in school. I know they have since because, like, the year I graduated, they did a fundraiser. But doesn't matter. So, like, we know that shorts were already short. This movie goes ahead and shortens the already, like, 3-inch inseam that were on men's shorts in the 60s.
Jeez.
Down to pretty much no inseam. It's just undies with a skirt over it. Whitey-tighties with a skirt. And it's great because it's so dumb. And on top of that, not only is none of this historically accurate, which honestly, I don't care. We've stopped being historically accurate a long time ago with this film.
It wasn't even historically accurate from the opening scene. Let's just leave it at that.
Exactly. On top of that, they did some brief, looking up of stuff. And they got some aspects of some costumes for ancient Mayan and Incans right enough from, like, I'm sure what was available in the public library in Italy in the 60s. But they also mistakenly got it wrong. Like, there's an entire ballet scene, ballet scene, where it's just, like, South American Native American tribes that would have been much later than the Incans. But that's, I'm sure that's what they had a picture of, and they went, what if they were blue?
South America adjacent.
Kind of. Like, I'm sure there's some overlap, but, like, that's just straight up blue Native American garb. Close, but not quite.
Yeah, it's an Italian interpretation of South American. Of
the public library's blurry picture.
Yeah. It makes me think a little bit of, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in, like, the style where it's flamboyant and over the top.
It's so flamboyant. And part of the fun is, like, they clearly have never been to South America because it is a dense, vibrant place. This movie is somehow almost two-tone, brown and green, but not in, like, the jungle green. In, like, Italian green, which is the different green, if you understand me. I know you're colorblind and cannot quite see the nuances here. However, surely even you can look at this movie and go, wow, everything is like Italian sandy blonde and light olive green as opposed to all of the vibrant rainbow of the jungle.
A fun fact that olive green is the color of green I can't see.
Well, congratulations, you're missing a good chunk of this movie.
I have a number of shirts and jackets that I bought thinking they were brown.
Mm-hmm, they're green?
They're green.
Yeah, I know. I can see some of them.
Yeah, I know.
But yes, so this movie's color palette is unmistakably Italian.
Okay.
And in the same way that if you were to walk into downtown Rome, like main old section of Rome, not just Rome, and then be like, hey, by the way, I want you to imagine right now that we're in South America. It's a little hard to do. But that's what the movie's asking of you. Pretty much.
Yeah, no, this movie's just all over the place. And even just the ending is really dumb. Like it doesn't
so baffling.
It doesn't really end because there's no conclusion of they topple the evil emperor. But they leave it really ambiguous if Hercules is going to be staying or if he's going to be heading back home.
Okay, so the thing that everyone should understand is the actual main conflict of the movie that is stated at the beginning and then again at the end, and also the entire reason for our hero to be involved, is that he is shipwrecked. And he opens with patting a man on the chest and be like, "You are a beautiful man, build me a boat." And then at the end, the beautiful men pat each other on the shoulders and go, "You're a beautiful man, the boat's almost done."
Yeah. It just... And also expecting him to go... I mean, it's supposed to be Hercules. He's supposed to have his feet. But I just had a thought.
Yeah.
What if he's not really Hercules?
That would make so much more sense.
What if... Or not, he's not the Hercules.
He's just some kid named Hercules who's kind of buff.
Yes, exactly.
That would make so much more sense. Because he gets his ass handed to him in battle. He can barely lift boulders. He doesn't seem to have any, godlike abilities.
What if it's just the town weirdo or the town method actor who's pretending to be Hercules and is just so into the role he's absolutely lost it and accidentally killed two of his buddies with him?
Maybe. Honestly, if the subtext that I somehow missed in translation or just I missed it while cackling about the rest of this movie was that this man is not actually Hercules, he's just some guy named Hercules, honestly, that would make more sense.
I don't think that's what it is.
I know it's not because I've seen almost all the other of these Hercules movies, and they're all like this.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I know it's supposed to be Hercules, but it reminds me of Franco Nero after he was Django.
Yes.
Anything he appeared in Germany, he was... Django doing whatever movie, even if it wasn't a Django movie.
Yes.
Just because of his stardom as Django.
Yeah, there's a lot of stars who get that. This is kind of reverse that.
Yes.
The only thing I will say that this movie is lacking as far as the genre goes is some form of flashback to Olympus. There is usually some version of Olympus, usually a nicely manicured backyard or somebody's garden, or honestly even a set that an empty set with some mirrors, one column, a vase, and a bush.
Okay.
And usually there's people in just straight up bud sheets walking around pretending to be on Olympus, and they narrate and maybe talk shit about the main character, usually Hercules, but sometimes there's other gods that get sent along with him. This one I will give them credit, they did choose to completely get rid of any concept of any of the other gods. It's just Hercules. He doesn't mention Zeus or Athena or literally anyone else. It's just Hercules. And I think that was a smart directing move. I'm gonna really applaud them for that writing choice.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of weird too, because it feels like there should be a little bit more, because the Incans don't talk about any of their gods either.
No, there's literally no mention of any Incan cultural references whatsoever.
No.
There's nothing.
Other than they're Incans.
Again, the only bit of actually somewhat correct bit, and honestly that's a bit of a stretch, is the city names. They kind of sort of get some names kind of right.
Yeah, vaguely.
Vaguely. That's it. That's literally it. There's no costuming. The dance, I guarantee you, is one of the dances is reminds me of something from Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. It's very barn raisin line dance style. And the other one is straight up ballet.
Yeah.
Like almost 5 to 10 minutes worth of ballet.
Yeah.
It's too long.
No, it's ridiculous. So, Chris, rent, buy, stream, or decline that we ever watch this despite having an audio recording of it.
Because I like this genre, I do plan on start collecting them. I know you already have it, so I could borrow it whenever I want. But I do think because I'm a fan of these stupid movies, and honestly, they are fun to pop in and just have, like, friends with drinks. You don't need to be paying attention. You can be doing other stuff, playing games, you know, chit-chatting, and just turn around and just witness a bunch of ancient Incans in blue headdresses doing ballet. And that's, honestly, you know as much as everyone else. So I will be buying this for myself. Now, for my friend who I was furiously texting, and I know that they will like them, I do say rent if you can. Yeah. I don't think you're getting anything by buying the DVDs. The DVD came with 2 movies on it. There's a front and a back to the disc.
It wasn't just that movie. It's a set of like 6 movies, and they're all different Hercules movies. I think there's like 1 or 2 actors who make a reappearance, but they're all different movies.
Yeah, like this very much, like, that's the set I will be buying, but like you're not getting any interviews, you're not getting behind the scenes or knowledge, like there's no games like the old Harry Potter DVDs, like it is just front movie A, flip disc over movie B, that's it. So I think for most people, just rent it. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, it's dumb. It's not my favorite in this kind of rough era. I do prefer the more dumb medieval ones where it's like the sword and sorceress where some chicks got 4 tits and they're all hanging out then fighting.
I will say Hercules and Tarzan generally were seen as more kid-ish friendly, so typically you get less tit.
Not the Roger Corman level of garbage that I would prefer.
Yeah, and again, that was a very generalized statement right then. Like, there are plenty of both of those genres that have a tit hanging just right out.
Yeah.
But, like, generally, if it has a character who you kind of sort of can recognize as like, oh, Disney at one point did something with them, generally the parents were like, oh, not really paying attention, but there's no tits, so it's fine. So in the genre, this is a tit-free-ish movie.
Yeah. I'm definitely in the rent area. I mean, it's
understandable.
It's fun, it's dumb. I don't particularly recommend watching it or even renting it to begin with, but I won't decline that I watched it.
Sure.
Just because I do love how dumb the dialogue is, and it was just...
Oh, it's terrible.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's terrible, but also you can, like, if you're interested in studying especially American pop culture, this is a fun one to, like, dive into, get your feet wet, like, do this one, do some of the Tarzan, do some of the other, like, adventure, do some of the Westerns, like, it was, all of that helped create the action-adventure scene that we have today.
Yeah, so... But, anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews.
Thanks for listening.
Peace! Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace!